Hello everybody, my name is Kate Cherry and I'm an independent consultant with a lovely company called Arbonne International, and I'm joined here today by Alice Yeates from Help Me Healthy Nutrition. Hi Alice.
Hiya.
Thank you for joining me here today. Just to give a bit of preamble, the company I work with is a company that helps people with healthy living from the inside out. So we are a product-based business with vegan products that are for your skin, their nutrition, there's cosmetics, baby care, whatever you like. But one of our overall messages is healthy living as a way or sustainable healthy living as a way to improve your mind, your body and your skin. So I am always interested to speak with people who are qualified in the area of gut health and other areas of health, such as Alice here. So what I wanted to do, continuing a little bit of my theme on food and the gut that you'll see in other videos I've posted and interviews, is to talk about Alice's area of expertise, because while Alice is a naturopathic nutritional therapist, there is a particular area of expertise that we've not talked about yet on these videos that we'd like to delve into. So without further ado, and I'm going to move you to main screen so that I'm small. What's your business, Alice? Tell us a bit about your business and how you help people.
So my main channel of business is helping diabetics to keep their blood sugars under control, and we do that just like you just said, to help mind, body and soul. And it's really important not to set massive goals, but to be setting a small goal at a time and for changing habits gently. So I have a 63-day program, which basically means that by the end of the program, people have altered habits and they find it much easier to control their blood sugars themselves. So I've empowered them to actually work for themselves.
And all that through food?
And through food and supplements. I would always go with food first, and I'm very careful about not using too many supplements. I don't like the idea of chucking a whole sort of store cupboard at somebody. I'm very much let's try this one and let it have some time to work, and then we might add in or we might change. We'll usually have a baseline. If somebody's, for instance, a lot of diabetics suffer from fatigue or a low mood, so we might have a baseline multi that will support them generally, but then we'll be looking at blood tests and seeing what's going on in the rest of their body and what's going on in their mind to work forwards to change habits.
Absolutely, because I guess any habit starts in the mind as well, doesn't it? In repeated
yes
action.
But interestingly, although the habit starts in the mind, it very often is influenced by the way the gut's behaving, because so many of our mood hormones are created in the gut. If our gut's not happy, then our mind's not happy. And some of the what concerns me is some of the diabetes medications. In fact, the most common diabetes medication which is used, which is metformin, actually causes sugar to stay in the gut. Now, that in itself, from a nutritional therapist point of view, is like, well, we don't like there being too much sugar in the gut, because actually it's encouraging the bacteria that we don't want. And that changes what the doctors, and now the word, the gut microbiome, it changes the balance of bacteria in our gut. And what we want to do is have a good balance of bacteria in our gut, so we produce the right hormones for our mood and for everything else, but for our mood and therefore our mind, and therefore being able to come back to changing habits with our mind in gear.
Which goes much deeper than what I'd call slapping a band-aid on it, which is either a drug or, watching an ad on telly and buying some Yakult.
Absolutely.
You've got a lot more to look at, haven't you? And you actually have a lot of experience in this professionally, don't you? So tell us about how you started, how you came to do what you do now.
So my early career was as a nurse. And interestingly, when I was a junior nurse, I was really nervous of diabetes. I didn't really understand it at all. And then at the end of my training, I was placed on a medical ward, which was specifically for diabetics. And I absolutely loved it. And I learned so much. I went on to work as a diabetic specialist nurse. This is in the 80s, quite a long time ago now. And so what I've really realised is that this gives me real confidence to support other people, to give them confidence in a way that maybe another nutritional therapist wouldn't feel, because I know that a lot of nutritional therapists are quite nervous of diabetes. And because of my experience both in hospital and in the community, I feel that maybe I'm just not quite as nervous. And what's really interesting about that is that it takes me to what I'm really passionate about, what my mission really is, which is actually to prevent the really nasty, the word's gone right out of my head, but the things that happen with long-term diabetes, the complications that cause really life-changing incidents, which things like gangrene in the feet, neuropathy, which gives people so much pain, kidney damage, damage to eyesight. The three things, that losing limbs, that ending up on dialysis and losing your eyesight. I've seen so many people in hospital having amputations or needing to be led around because they've lost their sight, or on permanent dialysis, as in going into hospital every day for half a day to have dialysis. And that's tough. And I know now that it's avoidable through lifestyle. And I've had great success with clients getting their blood sugars back and within normal limits. So within the limits that you and I have, which is incredible and very exciting.
So with, for example, people who are pre-diabetic, but also diabetic.
Yeah, pre-diabetic. Pre-diabetic's a little bit easier because the mechanisms that help the body to metabolize glucose are not quite so damaged. Once they get to diabetes, it takes a little bit more time and a little bit more effort, but we get there. I've had somebody recently who was on medication for 15 years and suddenly his blood sugars, having been controlled all the time, went out of control. And the medics said, it's time to go on insulin. And he said, well, I'd like to just give something else a try. And through his own choice, he is now off medication and his diet is good. I wouldn't say it's perfect, but it's pretty good. And his blood sugars are under the top end of normal, which is amazing.
So you can have that turnaround.
You can have that turnaround. What's incredible, what's really, really noticeable is that his mood is completely different and his energy is completely different. And that's what I would say to people. The effect of diabetes on mood and energy is massive. And because your mood and energy is depleted, it's really hard to motivate yourself to actually do anything about it.
And sugar's addictive, isn't it?
Sugar's very addictive, and keeping our blood sugar stable is actually really significant for everybody, because the more stable we keep our blood sugar, the less we actually want to eat sugar.
So it's important to think about that and to acknowledge. The reason I love doing these videos and interviews is to help people understand the link between every little thing you do in your diet and your lifestyle. So I'm not even gonna, my brain's completely blank.
I want to say actually, when you say that,
yeah,
lifestyle has a massive impact on diabetes, because actually stress, which all of us go through, and particularly at the moment people are having to go through more, and diabetics have a lot of diabetics have been told to isolate, stay at home. They were released, but the question is whether they will actually go back and have to isolate again. And I think a lot of them are choosing to isolate because they realise they're at higher risk. The higher risk is for people whose blood sugars are not in control. So, if their blood sugars are in control, they're not at as much risk as if their blood sugars are out of control. But what I was going to say about stress is that stress actually was designed for us to get away from danger. In order to get away from danger, we were designed to run. And in order to run, we need sugar. So when we're stressed, our liver produces sugar and we take sugar out of our muscles from storage. And that's putting sugar into the bloodstream. Now, for a diabetic, as you can imagine, that's actually really similar to having a cup of tea with sugar in it. It's not quite the same, but it's not that different, and it shoots their blood sugar up. So stress is a really, really major impact on your blood sugar. And it's something that people who are not diabetic need to be aware of as well, because that sugar influx is why when you're stressed, you reach for the sweet snacks.
And the wine.
And the wine, yes. Which is also, of course, mainly sugar. Yeah.
And then all the starches we don't think about, which convert to sugar.
Absolutely. I had a client come to me, which was really, it was an eye-opener for her, but it was quite shocking in a way. We were actually in a cafe venue, so there were lumps of sugar. And she gave me her diet for the day before, and she'd had toast for breakfast and rice and peas for lunch and baked potato for supper. And I started counting. There wasn't a lot else with them either. That was the other thing. There was very little protein and very little vegetables. So I started counting sugar lumps. And I was quite conservative, but the breakfast, I said, well, 2 pieces of toast, we're on about 10 sugar lumps. A portion of rice. I'll be generous here that you didn't have too much. We'll have another 10 sugar lumps. What size was your baked potato? A medium size. Okay, well, we're looking at 15 sugar lumps. And actually, the body had metabolized 35 lumps of sugar effectively and had virtually no protein or fiber from vegetables to slow that down. So that's quite a significant point with anybody, is actually protein intake is really, really important. And
one of my biggest eye openers was when a nutritional therapist told me how what happens to a potato, the different ways you cook it. So if you were to bake or roast a potato, and actually you can see this in action when I'm doing our Arbonne plan, I'll always have sweet potato instead of white potato. And you can see when you cook a sweet potato and bake it in the oven, the caramel that oozes out of it at a certain point. So what has always been known as the British healthy lunch of choice, a baked potato and something, is actually, is it that you're changing the makeup of the plant by cooking it, that it's got more sugar because you've baked it effectively?
Well, the sort of potatoes that we bake are a higher glycemic index, which means the sugar is released more quickly. New potatoes actually don't release quite as quickly.
Okay.
So I would always start by suggesting to my diabetics they cut potatoes, but if they're real potato fanatics, then they have a couple of new potatoes on their plate. And they'll roast new potatoes rather than roasting a white potato, as you call it, because the white potatoes actually are, they do release very quickly into the bloodstream. But what's interesting, if you reheat a cooked white potato, it's not released as quickly as it was the first time it was cooked. Something happens to the starches in the cook and cool process. So if you reheat a potato, and the same thing happens for frozen bread. If you toast frozen bread, the resistance of the starch changes, so that you actually get a lower release of sugar from the bread if it's been frozen.
That's interesting.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah. Low release bread, I like that. Which is better than the spikes, you're saying?
Yeah.
More manageable by the body. That's amazing. And talking about your passion about diabetes and sugar and the gut, you actually have a book, don't you?
I have a little ebook which I put together particularly for diabetics, which is a kind of basic guide, if you like, to fats, water consumption, protein, alcohol, carbohydrates and vegetables. And it's 1 page on each. I think it's total 12 pages. And I've had some really good feedback actually for people who've struggled to make any changes and have read this, people who are not readers, who have read it through and gone, well, I can do that. And just taken one section at a time and gone, well, I can do that. I can do that.
Yeah.
And then maybe I'll read it again in 3 months' time and, oh, well, actually now maybe I can manage that.
That's it, isn't it? Baby steps. And
baby
it's
steps.
Not to change too many habits. If it's for the long term and you're not just doing something for a month like you would with my plan, then it's got to be one thing at a time, hasn't it? You can't learn.
You can't climb a staircase without climbing each step. You just can't. And I think that's the really important thing. It's taken the body a long time to get to the point where it can't cope with the sugar. When it becomes diabetic, give it a chance to recover, and it will.
And that's
what's incredible
about the human body, really, what it's able to do.
Absolutely.
And I guess this is to your point earlier about vulnerability. There are people who are known to be vulnerable and asked to isolate, but there is a massive proportion of the population who just aren't aware that they're vulnerable because they've got all this going on and the impact of stress and everything. So this is useful information for anyone, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, and this balance of blood sugar has a massive impact on hormones. And that's not just insulin, that's reproductive hormones in younger women. It changes the way their body works. And if you get the sugars balanced, you begin to start to balance the hormones. And there are some more techniques that we use, and I've worked very successfully with some younger women to get their periods back in line. But they were having terrible pain and stuff, and now actually things are very manageable.
And similarly, the other end of the spectrum at menopause.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Sugar is huge within menopause. And I've got a client at the moment who literally, if she eats a pudding, she's in a hot sweat 5 minutes later, and her sweats are, and she says this, she says her sweats are 10 times worse when she's eating sugar, and she didn't realize it. She was having sweats every hour, all day and all night. And now she has more understanding of how it's working. She has a lot more control over how to deal with it.
She's empowered to deal with it, absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. And that's what I love doing, is actually for people to have tools. If you've got a tool in your toolbox that you can take out, so to speak, to use when you're struggling, it's so empowering.
That's how I love to look at it. Yeah, I know I have absolutely not the knowledge you have, but with the little bit I do know about from my business, I know I have, like you say, I talk about tools as well. I can go and I know that when this happens, I've got to stop doing this, that and the other. When my joints ache a bit too much, maybe I'm going a bit too heavy on the gluten, this, that and the other. And it is, like you say, empowering. I don't need to go to a doctor and get a pill. It's
what's really interesting is that you say your joints ache too much. Let's say if you have gluten, someone else might have a completely different response, and that's what's really interesting. There's been a relatively new piece of research that talks about the body's different responses to food. 2,000 people, and no two people responded in the same way to an item of food. Now, so we're all very different.
Which is why your work is so important, because with the functional testing you guys do, and it's if every individual one by one to work out what it is, it's a problem for them, isn't it? Amazing. I'm going to put the link to your book in the comments when we post this, which is fantastic. How can people connect with you, Alice?
So my website is helpmehealthynutrition.com, and my email address is alice@helpmehealthynutrition.com.
Perfect.
If you go to helpmehealthynutrition.com, there's also a contact page there with my email address on it. And if you if you know anyone that's diabetic, please do send them the link. Or if you're diabetic yourself, then have a look at the book and see what you think. And I'd love feedback. I love feedback, whether it's negative or positive. I love feedback. So let me know how you get on.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Alice, for your time.
Pleasure.
If you'd like to know anything else about Alice and what she does, then please do contact her, and I'm always here for anything you need. So thank you very much for watching, and speak to you soon. Thank you, Alice.
Thanks for having me.